For one being a representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad Gaza, bad we bad. Bad we bad Gaza. Too stuck in a...
Yasama batachinoi, besama yemet nor, semika des mangustinta, fegadi besama indionech, endihu bemedir tihun, yala tenjarachnen sitenzare, bedelachnem ikar belen, igna yebedelnen ikaren demenil, awada fetna matagban, kakifu adenenen fi, mengist yante antanantana, highly maskan lizlealem.
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, who speared and sacrificed. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Larry Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great presence. Om. Peace.
In Rome, the Pope Francis is making his first appearance from hospital. I said what I said and I meant what I said. During the past 5 weeks, we heard about 2 very critical episodes that Pope Francis had. His life was in danger. He was literally dead. You know, we had one person coming out and actually saying that he was dead, and it's an interesting situation, you know. So I followed the Vatican City news online, and, you know, every morning they give you an update on what's happening with Pope Francis and so on, and even themselves, at one point, you could tell that they weren't optimistic at all. They told us that he was intubated, and now they're telling us that he was never intubated, and that he always remained alert and oriented. But they told us that he wasn't alert nor oriented. But this morning, they are telling us that he was never intubated and that he was always alert. They said that he no longer has pneumonia and he's in a stable condition, even though he's not healed. Appearances to the mind are of 4 kinds. Anyway, so that's Rome. In the meantime, an interesting situation is unfolding. Well, many, I hear you saying, but hey, it's many. Yes, there is a discussion in Europe and the Americas, North America specifically, about whether or not the United States will join the Commonwealth. And the question appeared first in the World Economic Forum's controlled newspapers, media, press, those owned by not just Murdoch, but also representative or connection to the House of Lords in the United Kingdom. Oh, I do have to take a break. Let me take a break and come back. Fire, it's happening today at the Martins Primary School in St. Mary, and then to the Whitehall Cemetery. It's starting at 11 o'clock. So to those who are adjourning from across Jamaica to Martins in St. Mary, safe travels. And to the Fire family, once again, our deepest condolences, our hearts, and literally our prayers with you this morning as you go through the rituals for the final earthly resting place for Mama Fire, who transcended a few weeks ago. It is 35 minutes after 6 o'clock. Thank you once again for joining us inside of the Africa Forum. Earlier we were talking about the Pope of Rome, who Vicarius Christi, who now was out on the balcony of the hospital in Rome this morning, and the way they are immediately literally trying to bend reality, and how they have bent the truth, whatever the truth is, because what I do know is that they told us he was intubated. They told us that he was close to dying. They literally prepared the world for that death. Well, this morning they're saying it wasn't quite that. Whatever that was, and as I said, so we saw him. He's out there on the balcony. I want to remind us, and when we talk about what we see as opposed to what appears to be real, and also as opposed to what we are willing and able to see, because to be able to see beyond just looking, we're going to have to deprogram our minds. It's going to take a paradigm shift. We have to suspend everything that we knew or we think we know. We have to begin to question. To be able to see, we have to question what we have been taught, what we have been told. Who told us? How did we come to know what we know? How come we hold on so tightly to the things we know? One of the things, and Sheikh Anta Diop talk about that a lot, which is the cognitive dissonance, which is, but if you let go of what you know, the repercussions of that is really madness. What do you do when you do not have what you have been programmed to believe anymore, to hold on to? What if it is all a lie? And the way you know whether it's closer to your truth or it's a lie, you have to question who told you. Who told you what you know? Where did you get this from? And to what extent have you questioned the source from which you gathered this bit of information? And I'm talking about whether it's politics, whether it is geopolitics, whether it's religion, Christianity, whatever it is that you know. What is the source of your knowing? The source of your knowledge? Who told you? Where did you get it from? For example, hold on a little, ancestors come. Ancestors come. Ancestors come. I acknowledge my ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. Example, what is the number of the beast? I hear you. You said it's 666. Who told you that? I might go back to that once the pantheon of the ancestors have gathered. Because the protection has to be high, like really high, to go into this. But let me just say that there's a conversation happening across the United States, the pond, as they say, Britain, the United States, Europe. And this comes, and I'm relating this to the Pope. So I started with the Pope, then I'm going to go to this conversation that's happening. And this conversation is being led, coming back to who told you that, is being led by the World Economic Forum controlled media and press, including the Murdoch press, but it's being propelled and was propelled into the public space by the nobility controlled, and by nobility we mean the royal family connection, Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, controlled media, which would be the Daily Mail. The ownership of the Daily Mail must be closely studied. It is seriously connected to the monarchy of England. It is connected to both Buckingham and Kensington palaces, which would be Buckingham Palace being the palace of the King of England, Charles III, and the Prince of Wales, William. That's Kensington Palace, controlled by William, run by William. All right. So this conversation is being led by these two spaces, the World Economic Forum and the monarchy in England. Very interesting conversation. After everything that's happening with Ukraine and Russia, by the way, that is a distraction. The Daily Mail is driving this story that the King of England may or might extend an invitation to Donald Trump as a president of America to join the Commonwealth of Nations. I hear you. I hear you. Students of history are immediately gone to 1776. I know. I hear you. 1776 is where you went. I hear you saying, but 1776? I heard you saying, but 1603, 1604, 1607? I hear you saying, but the Mayflower, but the Pilgrims. But, I hear it, which is where student of history would immediately go. And those who are students of deeper history would probably go to King James I and to the Puritans and also to the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope. And if you're really deep into this, you might say, but Guy Fawkes Knight? It's phenomenal, the conversation. This is, we say the program is always running in the background. Everything that I've said this morning since I've been on is connected. Every single thing. Nothing is separate. So, this is a conversation. So, King Charles is reportedly preparing to extend an offer of associate membership in the Voluntary Association of 56 nations, most of which have a history as being former British colonies. America itself is a former British colony. And Trump has said that he's open to this idea. Remember that there are other non-British colonies, former British colonies that are in the Commonwealth. Rwanda, for example. Rwanda is the CIA's man, Kagame, the CIA and the FBI and MI6 and MI5, and Europe's man in Africa. Rwanda applied to join the Commonwealth of Nations. And so Rwanda is in the Commonwealth of Nations. If you recall, when the Foreign Affairs Minister, Kamina, was selected by the Prime Minister to throw her hat in the ring for the Commonwealth Secretary General, remember all these meetings happened, a lot of these meetings happened in Rwanda. I think even the vote happened in Rwanda. So just to remind you, and so why would a Commonwealth of Nations had, significant meeting like that happen in Rwanda? Because Rwanda is a former French colony. And we're saying this because of when and where we're entering just for this conversation, because we know this, to say that Rwanda is a former French colony, to say that we were former British colonies and so on. This is just for purpose of a conversation this morning. We're long before any of these enslavers come in, any of these children of the Watchers, the other evil, as our sister said last week. But from the Book of Enoch, the children of the Watchers. And if you have not read the Book of Enoch, you should read the Book of Enoch, and you should pay special attention to the children of the Watchers. Pay special attention to the Watchers, but also more attention to the children of the Watchers. Spend some time doing a bit of research on Azazel, Ancestors Come. And I just, it's energy, frequency, and vibration. We understand ourselves as spiritual people. And we know who we are and when and where we enter. We know we come and we go. We see ourselves as we see the stars and the galaxies. And we vibrate on the highest frequencies, and the lowest frequencies sometimes enter the spaces. But for whatever reason, I'm my father was a Pentecostal minister. And he used to say that sometimes we used to watch him as children growing up when he was preparing his lessons for Sunday school or his message for preaching, and and he prepare. My father is a man who prepare hard. When I read him have a Bible, and him have different versions of the Bible, and him have the study guide, and him have him note. As a matter of fact, I still have a lot of notes that I'm discovering in books. As I open the books, I find a little note that my father did scribble somewhere, for a message. So this is how he worked. And he used to say, really, that as much as he's preparing, he knows, and he allows himself that when he gets to the pulpit, that when he opens his mouth, it doesn't have to be what he prepared, but what God leads him to say. And I'm not saying that God is leading me to say anything this morning. I'm just saying that is reminding me of my father, in that you have a prepared program, but you keep going off script, and it's the ancestral presence that is the strongest and the highest. And in the space this morning, it is what it is, the ancestral gathering, the pantheon of ancestors that is strongest at the moment. Just saying. 10 minutes to 7 o'clock, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And so to go back, and once again, I want to underscore those who, I implore you to listen with a deeper sense of listening this morning. In this segment of the program, because everything I'm saying here is connected, and my own research and my own frequency and vibrations are involved in all of this. But more specifically, my research is deep, very, very deep. I've gone to almost everywhere in terms of the research for the information that I'm sharing this morning. So I know I mentioned the Book of Enoch. It's connected to everything else that I'm saying. But Donald Trump, the President of the United States, he has responded to this. This was first reported by the Daily Mail. The offer from Charles III, the Daily Mail said, would be formally extended during the planned state visit by Donald Trump to the United Kingdom. And we saw earlier that Keir Starmer delivered a handwritten invitation from the King of England to the U.S. leader during a visit to the White House last month. And we saw where the U.S. leader behaved like a little child in accepting that invitation. And the coverage of Donald Trump's response or attitude to the monarchy is very childish. And they're doing this deliberately. They're saying to us that Donald Trump loves the king and he loves the monarchy and he loves the queen. It's not as simple as that. All of that is a bag of bull. All of that is a lie, actually. It's not because he loves the king or he loves the queen. And also we notice over time that every single United States president, well, in recent times at least, have gone to England to meet with the monarchy. They cover it in different ways at different times. You know, you can follow the coverage if you will. I don't know if you've stopped to ask yourself, why is that particular relationship so important? They try to tell us why it is so important. They say it's a special friendship. It's a lie. A member of the Royal Commonwealth Society has told the Daily Mail that the possibility of America making entry into the Commonwealth is being discussed at the highest levels as a, and I'm quoting now, is being discussed at the highest level, end of quote. And it is, I quote, a wonderful move that would symbolize Britain's close relationship with the U.S., end of quote. Everything is unfolding as it should. I want to segue a bit, but it is still connected to when Charles III was crowned. How many people watched the coronation? A lot of us didn't watch it. Well, I watched, but a lot of you didn't watch the coronation, and I know why. But I watched, and after the coronation, he sat for his portrait. We talked about the portrait here in this space. Go back to look at the official portrait of the King of England. There was an uproar. It is red. Everything is red, and it looks as if he's in a burning fire. And lots of jokes were made about it. Why would he, knowingly sit for a portrait that, as you look at it, the entire symbolism is a symbolism directly from the Book of Enoch, which Enoch who walked with God and was not, in the King James Version. In the Book of Enoch, which was taken from the Bible by King James, ancestors come. The Book of Enoch was removed from the Bible by King James. The portrait of King Charles is an embodiment of the prophecy of Enoch as God in the Book of Enoch. And I'm going to go religious now, so bear with me, right? We know that these are all stories coming from the different texts that they're found, but we know the extent to which they take these stories as gospel, as serious. You know, I'm quoting from them. They believe them, but we know that they are stories. But we also know that in the world in which we inhabit, there is a struggle between good and evil. We know that there are evil forces, and we know that there are good forces, and we know that that's a continuous battle. So Enoch wasn't really, he was, this idea that he was not. It's not that he died, Enoch was taken, he didn't die. But when Enoch returned to the spaces, which would be the earthly space, because he was taken outside of that. And the description of that, Enoch himself, in his own vision, described what that was like. And basically, if you really take off all of the lenses and all of the glasses and everything, it really looked like it was an alien abduction. That's basically what it comes down to. I'm just saying, we can have another conversation about it another time, and I'm willing to listen. But anyway, so he came back, and when he came back, he said he was within the congregation of the Watchers. He was with the Watchers. Who are the Watchers? The Watchers are the 10 fallen angels, the 10 angels that left the heavenly realm, according to the story, and came to earth, and then had sexual relations with the women, and those women according to the Book of Enoch and according to the story, gave birth to children who were Nephilims, who were giants, who were, as they were. And one of those fallen angels was Azazel. And, so much the Book of Enoch tells you that Azazel did, and so much wrong in terms of long and short of Azazel's wrong deeds is that he caused the people, human beings, to start warring among themselves, that they were building weapons for war to kill themselves, and that it's because of him why there's so much bloodshed on the land. So Enoch was sent back by God, according to the story, to deal with the 10 fallen angels, but also to deal with the children of the watchers. So these fallen angels would have been watchers, right? And the children of the watchers are Nephilims and giants and so on and so forth. And so basically, Enoch got a vision to which God spoke to him and said, listen, bound Azazel by his 2 feet and hands and throw him into the darkest pit and cover him over until the judgment day, because at the day of judgment, Azazel will be the one. So let every sin. So Enoch's vision, God said to him, put every sin of the world, that's a sin of war, of killing, of nuclear weapons. Because if you read Enoch, the weapons that are described in Enoch, at the time, and we can go back as 1604 and beyond. And the reason why I say 1604 is because that was a moment that King James ordered or saw to it, oversaw the translation of the Bible. And it was at this time that the Book of Enoch was removed from the Bible. You understand the point I'm making? So, in any case, so God said to Enoch, put all the sins of the world into Azazel. Azazel will bear all the sins of the world. And at the judgment day, Azazel will be thrown into the fiery pit, which people call hell, right? Now, if you read the Book of Enoch and you look at the portrait of Charles III, the description of Azazel in that place of fire is basically what that portrait represents. Ancestors come. It's a minute after 7 o'clock. I have something to say, and I'm going to say it. So what is the number of the beast? I'm going to ask the elders who are listening and the high priestesses who are listening and the sisters who are spiritual to form your sister circles and do your thing, because I have something to say and I'm going to say it. What is the number of the beast according to Revelation? So the number of the beast according to Revelation is 666. But the number of the beast before 1604 was not 666. I'm going to say that again. It wasn't 666 before 1604. 1611 at the latest, because we have to now ask, who was King James the First? I have no notes with me. I am speaking from my head because I didn't intend to talk about this morning. And so I'm going to go from my head at 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. So this is an interesting thing, because Christianity, upon which the foundation of the Western world turns, is built on a lot of lies, half-truths, and deliberate programming. Because if we know ourselves, know who we are, know God, Mother, Father, God, what would that mean? Know thyself, and thou shalt know the Neteru. How do we know what we know? Who told us? And why haven't we questioned the source of our knowing? So, King James I is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary, as a child, was sent to France to betrothed or engaged to the Dauphin of France. And but she was also the rightful heir to the throne of England at the death of Henry VIII. But the throne went to Elizabeth I. Elizabeth was Mary's cousin. The Elizabeth, I think, might be a little younger, but these two are cousins. Elizabeth I. But Henry VIII, before Elizabeth's birth, was a promiscuous, pus-filled, sexually transmitted, walking syphilis. And he wanted to put away his wives. In history, they tell you that, he was discarding his wives because they weren't having sons. And I suppose that is entered into, those are written in documents. So we go along with it. There might be other reasons, but this is basically it, that they weren't having sons, and when sons were born, the sons would die, etc., etc. And so, but the church, the Roman Catholic Church, which was the spiritual head of the monarchy of England, would not allow a divorce. Henry was insistent on divorce. But he couldn't do it as long as England was part of the Roman Catholic Church. So what Henry did, upon advice, was to break with the Roman Catholic Church and started the Church of England, at which he put himself as a head, Vicarius Filii Dei. So he's now the divine representation of God on earth, and he's also the king. He, in essence, now has more power than the Roman Catholic Church, which wielded a lot of power over England. And so Elizabeth, when she succeeded her father, carried through that, finished that or continued on that track where the monarch has a divine right, Vicarius Filii Dei, or Dei, like Opus Dei or Filii Dei. We know that when we talk about Vicarius Filii Dei, we tend to attribute that, because they tell us to attribute that to the Roman Catholic Pope. But that was the exact title of every monarch of the king of England, all the way up to right now. Now, I know that in religious scholarship, ancestors come. I know that in religious scholarship, that one of the things that is taught, remember now I am the daughter of a minister, one of the things that is taught is how, using the gematria, how do you calculate the number of the beast? Because in Revelation it tells you the number of the beast is the number of a man. So the calculation has always been on the name to one extent, and also on this vicarious Filii Dei. And of course, vicarious Filii Dei, gives you the number through the gematria of 666, and also the number of the man, which at the time was Emperor Nero. Emperor Nero, remember Nero? Fiddles while Rome burned. So Nero was identified by people within the Church of England as the beast. Now, when 10 minutes after 7 o'clock, when James was born, so James is a son of Mary. He was born in Scotland. Mary is a queen of Scotland. Elizabeth is a queen of England and Ireland. James was not the heir to the throne, although James would have been the rightful heir to the throne because he's a son of Mary. But let me just cut all of this short in terms of that Mary-Elizabeth relationship. Mary was eventually imprisoned by her cousin Elizabeth in the Tower of London and later killed, beheaded. The beheading of Mary is interesting because while it was Elizabeth who ordered the beheading of Mary, James the First, King James the First of England, was also party to the killing of his mother. I know that there are questions and people are going to say, oh, but so people are going to point to age and people are going to, yes, it is what it is. So, what was James like as a man, King James? And we're talking about King James from the KG version of the Bible, King James version. King James came to the throne in what was it? Is it 1603 or 1604? Remind me. As I said, I'm speaking from my head. Or probably a little bit before that. Now, what kind of person was King James? He was a stodgy person. He was very weak in his legs. He could hardly walk. He couldn't walk unless he was leaning onto someone. He had a deformity, a facial deformity. His tongue was described by his those who were writing about him at the time, without judgment, to say his tongue was twice the size of his mouth, and so that when he spoke, it sounded as if he was speaking with his mouth full, like he had food in his mouth. That when he drank, it because of the size of his tongue, it looked like he was eating the liquid, and it would run down both sides of his mouth back into the cup. So it wasn't a pretty sight. Now, he also was very scholarly. He was weak. He was appeared almost, effeminate. But he was also very scholarly. But at the time of, ascending the throne, he himself was following his ancestors, who were vicarious Filii Dei. They have the divine right. Every monarch of England, since Henry VIII, now had a divine right, the divine right of kings, which meant the king was the voice of God on earth. The king was a representative of God. The king spoke for God. In essence, when you see the king, you see God. This is basically how the British monarchy is set up. So that if you go back to the coronation of Charles III, you'd recognize that a lot of it was in secret. And if you go back and listen to what the priest was saying, he was in essence saying the very same thing. He was talking about the divine right of kings, that Charles, in essence, is a representative of God on earth, that Charles is the voice of God, that if you see Charles, you see God. We have to understand this. Nothing has changed in the British monarchy since Henry VIII as far as the divine rights of kings is concerned. And even if they say otherwise, it is not so, because listen to what happened in the coronation. Listen again also to the language that was used at the burial of Elizabeth and the rituals that were done and those that we were told were done in secret and so on. Now, one of the things that King James did when he came to the throne, let me take a quick break, importance to us. And the reason why it is important to us is that we have tied ourselves to lies. We oppress each other with lies. We divide ourselves with lies until we understand what is tying us to this space and to this place where it appears as if we are forever a slave class, until we understand how we got here to this place without a paddle. Until we understand that, I think we won't understand where we are. But let me just say something quickly, because I went immediately to King James being, coming to the throne. Remember, James was a Stuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, and before him were the Tudors. But he was James Charles Stuart, and he ascended the throne because Elizabeth I, who was a cousin of his mother, died without a child. And so she left, interestingly enough, everything that Mary fought for went to her son. So James was already King of Scotland. Elizabeth was Queen of England and Ireland. So what that amounted to, that James was the very first king, the very first monarch to unite or to be head of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Scotland is very important to the British monarchy. We'll talk about that and the Stone of Scones and another time. But if you notice, Scotland is extremely important to the British monarchy. So James ascended the throne in 1603 or 1604. I think it might have been 1603. And he inherited the throne from Elizabeth I. So he became King James I of England, but I think he was James the fifth, sixth, might have been of Scotland, but it's the same James. So this at the time he ascended the throne, it was a time of foment. It was a time of upheaval. It was it followed on the ongoing war between the Catholics and the Church of England, or the Anglicans, and also the Puritans and other religious groups. All right, let me do this and come back. So there was just so much confusion in England, Scotland, and Ireland at the time that James ascended the throne. And thank you so much, because I just went on my phone and saw that the sister circle is in place. Thank you so much. I'm getting goose pimples. I went on my phone and I saw that the elders are in place and the priests and the priestesses are in place. And we appreciate the circle. I also went on my phone and saw that James I ascended the throne in 1603, and he ruled from 1603 to 1625. Thank you so much for that. Aldith and Arthur and Jay and Clover And who else is this? Okay, great. And Rochelle, I think it is. All right, so thank you so much for the information as we speak. I have put everything away because I have to find myself in a place to be able to talk about this. Right, so keep the sister circles in place. Ancestors come. So when James ascended the throne, he found it was a time of upheaval for him. And there was war among the bishops and the Puritans and the Catholics and the Anglicans and so on. And at the time, they demanded from James his attention to all that was fomenting, all that was overflowing, and believe me, it was really a critical time in England, a religious war, literally. Not just religious, I mean, there were economic problems and social problems, political problems also. But one of the greatest problems he had was the religious problems, and he had that because the Puritans were questioning the divine right of kings. The Puritans were saying, the king is not the voice of God. The king is not vicarius filii Dei. The king doesn't represent God on earth. James, of everything that James I hated, the political challenges, what people were saying about him, what people were writing about him, how people were, what the economic situation was in England. We're talking about the 1600s now. It's just the other day. So he thought it prudent to immediately deal with the religious situation, with the bishops and the Puritans and the Church of England. And so he called a conference. This conference was in 1604. It's called the Hampton Court Conference. I want you to read up on that and do some more research for yourself. So James convened the Hampton Court Conference. This was a meeting of the clergy, of the theologians. So the Puritans especially were boisterous. They will have and would have none of the divine right of kings. The king was not vicarius filii Dei. By the time James the first coins were made, because every king have money, and them head up on the money, and something is written under the money. And the American money you talk about, in God we trust. Now, if the king is vicarius filii Dei, then who is America's God? That is a question to be answered another time. On King James and King James's coins was written the words vicarius filii Dei, or Dei, D-E-I. Everything is connected. I don't take anything for granted around here. Vicarius filii Dei means the king is the vicar or the son of God. The Roman Empire, in the meantime, had an emperor and a pope. The pope, from what we know, is a representative of Peter on earth. You are Simon Peter. Upon you will I build my church, and I will give to you the keys of heaven. And you can open this and open that, and whatever you seal on earth will be sealed in heaven. Peter, Simon Peter, which a pope represents on earth. Now, I know that in the Catholic Church, people go straight to the Pope is the voice of God on earth, but it's more nuanced than that. Because the Pope represents Peter, and Peter represents Jesus, and Jesus gave the keys of heaven and hell to Peter to build a church upon this rock, then by extrapolation, Peter then becomes the representative of God. So the Pope represents the representative of Christ, a vicarious Christi. Whereas the only people in the 1600s and since Henry VIII who identified themselves as vicarious filii Dei is a monarchy of England. One of the things that we do a lot is to say the beast is the Roman Empire. But 666, I think that was in Revelation, as a beast, the number of the beast was changed. The original number of the beast in the ancient biblical texts, all the way up to 1611, was not 666. 1611 was just the other day. 1611, they were stealing Africans from the continent of Africa and enslaving them in the Americas and the Caribbean. 1611 is just the other day. If you want to connect to know how close 1611 is, just connect it to what was happening in Jamaica at the time or anywhere else in the world, and you see it's just last week. So James called the Hampton Conference, the Hampton Court Conference, and the Puritan scholars. It was a conference of scholars and clergy. And so the Puritan scholars demanded a change to the divine right of kings. And James, who would have none of it, took a decision that the only way to concretize himself and to put a stop, draw a line in the sand regarding the divine right of kings, the vicarious filii Dei, which is the king is the voice of God, I am God on earth, was to translate the Bible and let the Bible say that. I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back. So then, but I'll definitely carry it next week. Right now, the pantheon of ancestors are here. And in this pantheon, the demand is that we talk about how we come to be where we are without a paddle and without any ideas as to how we got here and how do we get out of it. So here we are. Slavery was one of the most barbaric acts. The transatlantic trade, slave trade in Africans that we've seen in recent memory. It went on for years, for centuries. We wondered, in hindsight, even as we read through the documents from the House of Commons in England, which document the discussions with Wilberforce and Orlando Equiano and the others who stood up for the abolition, even though, and listen now, we're not saying that these abolitionists were the reason for the abolition of slavery, because we know the resistance in the so-called colonies was phenomenal. And then outside of the resistance, economically, it was no longer the best for Britain. One of the most stringent and steadfast opposition to the abolition of slavery is the Church of England. The Church of England, the bishops of the Church of England, were the most vocal of all the planters, all the enslavers, against the abolition of slavery. The Church of England owned plantations up and down the Caribbean, enslaved hundreds, killed hundreds. We must understand that, and then again, within the context of understanding that, we must understand the history, and we must understand how come we are in this place. And also, if we're to take it to a religious level, which so many people are, we must understand and know what is the number of the beast. This morning, in this space, I am saying to you that the number of the beast is not 666. So, when they met at the Hampton Court Conference, there's a man called John Reynolds, Rainolds. Look him up. He's a Puritan scholar. They couldn't agree on anything. The scholars were fighting with the Puritans, fighting with the Catholics, fighting with the Anglican. As a matter of fact, the Catholics weren't even invited. They were, for the most part, left out of it, even though some of them, were there as scholars. There was some piecemeal business that happened. But this conference happened just the other day. This conference happened in 1604. You understand what I'm saying? It's just the other day. So nothing should be hidden from us. Every bit of information regarding this conference is out there. It was just the other day it happened. So there was this proposal to translate the Geneva Bible or translate the other Bibles, because they worked with the Geneva Bible, but there were other Bibles before the Geneva Bible. But to translate the Bible into English. And this is where appearances to the mind comes in. One of the biggest betrayal, the hypocrisy, the lies, the wickedness, the theft, the underhandedness, the barbarity, the vulgarity, the egregiousness happened right in that Hampton Court Conference. So, the translators, King James I appointed about 50 of us scholars as translators, and he divided these into 6 groups or companies to work on the translation. They had guidelines for the translations. One thing I am sure about, the guidelines for the translations that King James and them laid out included that they must use Hebrew, Greek, and the Aramaic texts. So these were the texts that we were supposed to use. So they weren't going to use Gaze. And remember, Gaze would have been one of the oldest Bibles. And that Bible would have been, that's in Ethiopia. Not just Ethiopia, but the Eastern Orthodox churches would have been using this long before 1604. So there were Bibles out there, the Geneva Bible, and I can't remember the other names now, but they're there. I mean, you just need to know what they are. Just Google what were the other Bibles before the KJV, and you'll see the ones. The Geneva is the most popular one because they were using that so much at the Hampton Court Conference. But the Gaze, the Eastern Orthodox Bible that is used in Ethiopia, it's a Gaze. It wasn't included in James's plan to translate the Bible to English. And it's that, just off the top of our head, you remember that in Ethiopia, where in the English Bible it says Mount Zion is a place. In Gaze, the Bahato, priests, they tell you that where you see Zion, that is Mary. So that's a whole other thing. And why I'm bringing that up is to say that if you really wanted truth, you'd have gone for the oldest Bible that you could have defined in translating all of this. But anyway, that's an aside. So they were to use the Hebrew text, the Greek text, and the Aramaic text. So the Aramaic would be the text that would be closest to the Gaze in terms of this is an ancient text. So there we go. And so they were using the Tyndale Bible and the Geneva Bible as their guide. And they were told not to make any marginal notes, and that is critical, and we'll find more about that as we go along. So they finally laid out the King James version after time. But the conditions under which all of this was done. This is what is critical. Remember we told you about the Puritans. So the Puritans were part of the Church of England, but they were a faction of the Church of England. And they were against Catholicism. So they didn't want any vestige of Catholicism to remain in England. But their disputes went much further, much wider, as we told you before. One of the things that they challenged was the divine right of kings, which is to say the king is God, vicarius filii Dei. James was threatened, and he used the translation of the Bible to quash that threat. Basically, that threat was that conflict between the Church of England and the Puritans. And even at the end of all of that, the conflict wasn't fully resolved. The Puritans board a boat, them call it the Mayflower. Those who would have nothing to do with James' audacity to say that he's vicarius filii Dei, he's a voice of God, he's as divine right of kings. They boarded a boat, they call it the Mayflower, they landed on Plymouth Rock. They had with them, and I know Andrew will agree with me on this, good morning Andrew, they had with them the Tyndale and the Geneva Bible. But they also had another book written by King James himself, and that book is called Demonology.
Safe, reliable, great value. Always buy from an authorized IGL.
When they went to America, includes what we have come to know as the Salem witch hunt. You're making the connection? Okay. King James was a scholar. He wrote a book, a seminal text, massive book called Demonology. If you want to know what he really thinks, then maybe you should start with that. So basically what he wanted to do was to counter the influence of the Geneva Bible. So that's why he didn't want any marginal notes. He wanted a standardized Bible. It was going to be in English. And he wanted to censor the Bible, and he wanted to control the Bible. And he exercised this censorship, and he exercised this control over every religious text and over the Bibles themselves. He prohibited the publication of any more Geneva Bible in England. He stopped the publication, and he ensured that the King James Version would be the only authorized version. He said it was authorized. Those who did not adhere to everything that he changed in the King James Version were killed. Once he knew about it, they were viciously slaughtered. It was a bloodbath. Bishops were killed. Bishops were punished. Scholars were killed. Scholars were punished. It didn't matter who you were. And if you did not agree that this King James Version that James had translated to prove that the king had divine right, that if you did not agree with that, then you die, or you were viciously punished. And those nobles who didn't agree, they lost everything. Some weren't killed, they were just stripped of everything and made into commoners. Those bishops who weren't killed were exiled, in the same way the nobles were exiled, but you left in poverty. And that's why so many of the Puritans ran, because they were never going to agree that the king was vicarius filii Dei. The documents that accompanied the King James, the translation of the King James Version, and they entered the translation in 1611, noted that the king was vicarius filii Dei. But something happened in the translation, because that's Revelation and the beast and the number of the beast. The number of the beast is the number of a man. And the number of the beast is 616. 616 is the number of the beast before the translation. But the number of the beast is the number of a man. And Vicarious Filii Dei, using the gematria, translates into 616. And James I, using the gematria, translates into 616. And the king who succeeded him, Charles I, translates into 616. And Charles III at this time translates into 616. And the British monarchy and the kings, using the gematria, all the way down to now, because they are who they are, translate into 616. Now, if you want, and you're really serious with the gematria, which is what they use, you'll find that they also translate into 666. Now, what was the reason given by the scholars? This is what King James said at the time, and the scholars said at the time, and they published this. Why did you change the number of the beast to 666 from 616? The number they gave, the reason they gave, is that this translation was done so as not to embarrass or anger the emperor of Rome, whose number was 666. It makes no sense, because the Roman emperor was not Vicarious Filii Dei in the way that the British Empire is Vicarious Filii Dei from Henry VIII. So the reason they gave is a very interesting reason, because if you're changing it from 616 and you're making it 666, then it is going to point to Emperor Nero. It's going to point to the Roman emperor. And if you're not careful, it will point to the Pope. So how is it that you're saying you change it from 616 to 666 so as not to embarrass Rome? And all it did was to cover the original texts and the original writings, and to cover the British Empire. The reason for the translation of the Bible from Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic was to prove to the world, one reason, that the king had divine right, was to underscore the divine right of kings, which is to say James I was a son of God, Vicarious Filii Dei. It's in the documents and it's on his coin. So he appointed loyal bishops who were loyal to him and to the Church of England. And those bishops ensured that anything outside of King James's policies would be suppressed. Any dissent would be viciously put down. And they made it known that the King James Version was written by inspired men of God. And what is not there must not be added. And what is there must not be questioned. Do not add or take away anything from the King James Version, because this is the voice of God. But remember that when James I speaks of the voice of God, he's speaking of the divine right of kings, which is to say, I, James I, is the voice of God on earth. God speaks only through me, the king. Remember, he's not the first king to do this. This is how the British monarchy is set up. This is the foundation upon which the British monarchy is built. Even at the time of slavery, I'm going to go back now to say, there is a book that we must read, Britain's Black Debt, and the corresponding book written by Hilary Bickles, because it shows you the bishops' role in slavery and what the bishops did to ensure that slavery was accepted. They connected it back to the King James Version, the Bible, to make it acceptable. And so the conversations in England stop. The outrage stop. And you have to read Beckles, not just Beckles, but if you do read Beckles, you'll see the extent to which the bishops went to put in the literature in the spaces to show you that the Bible condones slavery. But King James changed a lot of things in the Bible. He changed a lot of things to ensure that no one questioned anymore the divine right of kings. I want to say as an aside, and we mentioned it here in this space a few months ago, that William, the son of Charles III, who is now heir to the throne of England, he came out the other day and he said, I do not want to be head of the Church of England. In essence, because he's not an idiot, he was saying that the divine right of kings is going to stop with me. And what happened when he said that? Every Illuminati, every deep state, every righteous and thou, holier than thou, every deeper than deeper Hampton Court and Bohemian Grove representative, because we cannot use the other word in our mind, came out of the woodwork and beat that down. For what reason did they get so angry with William, who I am not even saying anything nice about him, and I'm just saying this. It's not to agree with him on anything, because he's a whole other kettle of tea, but we'll talk about that later. But why were they so angry with him when he said, I will not, in my reign, I do not want to be the head of the church? He was saying to those who understand the language that in my reign, I do not want to participate in this divine right of kings foolishness. So by translating the Bible into English and controlling it with killing and murder and viciousness, bloodbath in England, Scotland and Wales, King James consolidated his power and the authority over the Church of England and at the same time the English monarchy. Also, I told you what happened to the Puritans. They ran to the United States. They fled with the demonology, the Geneva Bible and the Tyndale Bible, participated in the Salem witch hunt. Do you know that Guy Fawkes Night, that we talk a lot about? Guy Fawkes Night? Anybody know Guy Fawkes Night? There's even a poem that includes Guy Fawkes Night. Bite and gum shield, God hell high, Guy Fawkes Night flashes in my head. Guy Fawkes Night is in the lexicon, man. Everybody know about Guy Fawkes Night and the bonfire. And Guy Fawkes was part of a Roman Catholic plan to, I think including the Puritans, to blow up the Parliament of England when King James and Henry, Prince of Wales, were in the Parliament sometime in November, one date in November, I think it was. So if you understand who Guy Fawkes was, Guy Fawkes in the history, which a lot of us know about because we read about Guy Fawkes here and there and everywhere, that Guy Fawkes, that he wasn't the main planner of this, but this was planned by some of the bishops, some of the politicians, some of the scholars and so on. It was a massive plan to kill King James because of what he was using the Bible to do, what he was about to do with the Bible to say that he's God on earth, and to blow up the Parliament with him and Henry of Wales in there. And a noble who was part, or I think is a clergy member who was part of the plan to blow up the Parliament, pinch a noble, a parliamentarian, and tell him, say, look here, don't come a Parliament tomorrow, because we're going to blow that up. And this noble, Lord, whoever he was, I can't remember his name now, understanding what was being planned, went and told the other nobles, the other lords, and they all went to tell James that, listen, there is a massive plan by the Roman Catholics, by the Puritans, by the bishops, by the scholars to blow up Parliament when we come here at 11:30. And so they didn't go to Parliament. Guy Fawkes was found hiding somewhere with ton loads of explosive under him. They still celebrate Guy Fawkes Night all over the world. They still light bonfires and celebrate Guy Fawkes Night. You think about that. This was how the people were resisting what what James was doing. One thing we know that came out of a translation of the Bible by King James was that there was a major reason for it. And the major reason for the translation to English was to reinforce the concept of the divine right of kings. And the divine right of kings held that the monarchs were appointed by God and answerable only to God. This is where we are. Slavery was also very much on the agenda at the translation of the Bible. Vicarious Filet Die, 616, using the gematria, was also a problem. King James saw this. Revelation is saying, behold, and I can't remember the chapter, the verse, but it says something to the effect that, like it has to look at the beast, because the beast it has a number of a man. I'm sorry, I can't even find the scripture because it is so pleasant to read. So poetic, But basically, the 616 would point to King James, Vicarious Filet Dei. And so they had to take that out. Also, they had to change so much in it because because King James didn't want the Puritans to use the Bible as judgment against him. So what did they take out wholesale to prevent the Puritans from weaponizing the scriptures against James? It's a little book called the Book of Enoch. Apocrypha is a consideration, but the Book of Enoch was singled out because James saw the Book of Enoch as the book that could be weaponized against him. The description of the end times, the judgment, Azazel and the watchers, the 10 watchers, the beast on the earth and the beast in the water, and Enoch's vision, and so much more in terms of what's happening now, in terms of the artificial intelligence and in the convergence of the digital technologies and spaceships and so on. Remember now that Enoch is also related to Noah, because Enoch was told to tell Noah that because of what's happening on earth, there was going to be a deluge. Now, once again, I am saying to you that all of these are stories that came from some of the ancient texts that these people have taken and have weaponized it against us as a people. And we have turned around and tied ourselves willingly after, in some cases, because the chains have been removed from our feet. The slavery was situated and contextualized right into this whole translation of the Bible. But we find ourselves tying ourselves to this programming, the psychological operation, predictive programming. Or those who were part of a suppression of dissent, those opposition voices to the monarch were killed or viciously punished. I'm going to wrap this, but I want to talk about some of the changes that were made. Changes to Exodus 1 verse 19, for example. Changes to, and I'm just going to give out some of the scriptures because I can't read through all of them, and I suppose I'll go through another time, if you want me to, let me know, to tell you what scriptures were changed, how they were changed, and what they said, and how they were changed so as to authorize and sign off on James as the voice of God on earth. But there's also something else that happened. Some things were, there were omissions, and we need to talk about that, especially in Revelation. We tell you about that great omission. I've just found this. Thank you. People sending me things. I really appreciate that, and keep the circle going, the sister circle. Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, the translations before that manuscript suggest that the original text read 616 instead of 666. This is how James removed all the challenges to his authority. This is how his rule as a monarch was supported. Any passage that could be interpreted as predicting the downfall of earthly kingdoms were changed or removed totally. He changed even scriptures that imply that God will preserve the poor. He changed scriptures that translate Lucifer's name. He changed text that pointed to Israelites lusting after Egyptian men. And then change from men to idols. It's simple things as that, Even the Lord's Prayer was not immune from James. So where he adds, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever, amen, that is nowhere else to be found. Because remember, thine is a kingdom. Remember now, vicarious Philadelphia. So they added that. It's not there in the other earlier biblical text. Even the conversation with Jesus and Satan, all of that was touched. There's just so much that was touched. But one of the things that, and we talked about the Apocrypha, Tobit, Judith, additions to Esther, the Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus was cut out because it talked about the judgment that would fall upon those who oppress the poor. Baruch, the letter of Jeremiah, the Maccabees, of course. And they took out the excuse they used for taking out the Book of Enoch is that it was not written in Hebrew. So it's contemporary. And if you just Google these things, they are going to throw up the contemporary information. So you have to go deeper than Google. Did you hear what one of the former Jewish Israeli prime minister said just recently? He said, when Wikipedia was coming on stream, Israel recognized that they had an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To control the narrative, for propaganda. And so they began to train Israeli Mossad to be editors at Wikipedia. Remember, you can be an editor at Wikipedia. I am a Wikipedia editor. I signed up years and years ago. The minute I was one of those who signed up when Wikipedia was coming out. So what Israel did was to train Mossad agents to be editors for Wikipedia. So when you go to Wikipedia for anything, it is going to be pro-Israel. And if for a minute you find it with not being pro-Israel, You come back another time. If it's gone, it's going to be back there in short order, because they monitor these spaces. They understand the importance of the word. What are we doing? What are we doing? How do you know what you know? Who told you what you know? And why have you not questioned it? So here we are, a Christian country. The head of state is a monarchy of England, Vicarious Filii Dei, or Dei, D-E-I. The monarchy of England is the head of state of Jamaica, and we're asking questions about that. What is the number of the beast? Who is Vicarious Filii Dei? Who has and see themselves as having the divine right of kings? Why are we focusing on Rome? So America will be America. There's an understanding of the British monarchy, the only monarchy to survive centuries, thousands of years, in the way that any monarchy has survived. I am willing to listen. So, how was the Bible changed to facilitate the enslavement of Africans and slavery? Were they identified words? The scholars, servant versus slave, for example. So the King James Version often use the word servant, even when the original Greek or Hebrew text clearly referred a slave. They were softening this whole process, which was slavery. Bond servant is also something that they put in. Master versus Lord is something that they tie down or double down upon. And all these, and remember, even the Geneva Bible and the Tyndale Bible, one thing they both agreed on was the enslavement of people. But the King James Version went a bit further. So they use interpretations that justified slavery. And that's why they didn't want any marginal notes. So interpretations were made from the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek writing texts to justify slavery. For example, Genesis 9, verse 25. And they use that over our heads. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." That's King James. Leviticus, permitting Israelites to buy slaves from neighboring nations and to treat them as property, also used to justify slavery. The instruction in Ephesians for slaves to obey their masters with fear and trembling, used to justify slavery. Slaves instructed in Colossians 3, 22 to 25, slaves to obey their masters in singleness of heart, fearing God, used to justify slavery. And the King James Version scholars, they also made some changes that emphasized slave ownership and the authority of the slave owners. Some of that we can see in Ephesians. And I talked about the bondservant, etc. before. They provided a biblical basis for slavery. They legitimized the authority of the enslaver. And one of the things that it did was also to perpetuate the racist attitudes. I want to ask, why are we not questioning where we are, how we are, why we are, and where do we go from here? What is the number of the beast? Jamaica is arguing about constitutional reform. Jamaica, a Christian country. We spend or so you say. We spend so much time arguing about whether Charles, Vicarious Philae, should be the head of this nation. We saw the portrait that was done of him at his coronation. We heard the rituals. Some we saw and some they told us about. We saw the rituals at the burial of Elizabeth. I came here and I talked about it. We see what's on their church doors. We see what's in their church ceilings. We see how they project themselves using Christianity as a vehicle for that projection. But do we know that they see themselves as vicarious Philae, that they are and have the divine right of kings, that they are the sons and daughters of God on earth, that only God can tell them what to do? What does that mean in the larger scheme of things? Why do we expect that they're going to do anything that we're saying and asking for, including reparations? Haven't they told us where to go and to put ourselves as far as reparations is concerned? And even while we fight for that, how do you fight with 616? What is the number of vicarious Philae Dei? I want to say something quickly, two things. One is that the information that I, gave this morning really is European history. A lot of it is not available just by Googling. Wikipedia is controlled. It probably give you some, it won't give you much. They've already determined what the answers are to the questions you're going to ask. The best way to get information on this is to use some of the very old texts, the texts that were written closer to, Henry VIII or Elizabeth or Victoria, or some of the, and sometimes you have to go archival. So if you can go into online archives that allow you access, or you go into peer-reviewed journals, or it's going to be difficult to just Google and get the information. They're going to tell you, for example, we remove Enoch because it looked like it wasn't written by men of God. We take it out, but we know that in the archives and the documents relating to this, it was removed because it didn't. They didn't want it to be weaponized against James I. The Puritans could have used it to weaponize him, to be weaponized against him in terms of, the vicarious Philae Dei. So the divine right of kings, etc., etc. So there is that. How you're going to research this is going to, determine what you find. If you're going to be using their own sources, then make sure it is their sources from their archives and from their earlier texts when, not so much was covered. But if you're just going to go internet and do some light searches, you're going to be led down a garden path. Let me just say that. Say quickly is that they also removed from the King James Version were and these were significant changes, by the way, that they made to the representation of Black and African people, but also when compared to the Geneva Bible and the earliest biblical texts, they represented the geographical locations of Africa in a different way. As a matter of fact, they removed locations. For example, they altered or removed to African locations such as Kush, Ethiopia, and Put, Libya, which were present in the Genevan and biblical and the earliest texts. So many mentions of Ethiopia and Libya and so on, a lot of those were taken out. The King James Version also changed the identity of certain biblical figures, such as the Queen of Sheba. We came to find out later on, though, we understood who that was referencing the Geneva Bible gives enough information there. The they added racist language to describe people in the Bible, whereas the Ethiopian not understood to be the Ethiopian and what the Ethiopian was, but they added language to which was racist, but also to devalue people. They omitted positive references to Africa, and things were interpreted differently. Remember, they took away the marginal notes. There was an erasure of African presence. They removed African geographical locations, and some of the locations they removed, I'll probably talk about that another time. But there were, let us say there were 100 and odd locations, African geographical locations in the Bible identified as continental Africa. Those were removed, and they were either made abstract or they were just put different places. For example, the River Gihon. The River Gihon is in Ethiopia. The Tyndale Bible, the Wycliffe Bible, the Geneva Bible especially spoke of the River Gihon running through the Garden of Eden in Ethiopia. They took that. They took out Ethiopia. Gihon is still in Ethiopia, and it is still called Gihon, by the way. So there's just simple, well, it's not simple, but stuff like that. They went through the Bible with a fine-tooth comb to erase African geographical locations, to erase African people, to make blackness a crime, and just to devalue black people. And that's just one thing they did. All of this, by the way, is recorded in all of those documents surrounding the Hampton Court meeting from which the Puritans walked out and went into the United States on the Mayflower and carried out the Salem witch hunt. And here we are. What is the number of the beast? But just to say thank you so much to the Sister Circle who held the circle, and I know you're still holding the circle. Thanks to the elders, thanks to the priests, thanks to the brothers, and just thank you to all who are holding the circle this morning. We know it is true that we fight not just against flesh and blood, but against principalities and power, and especially when we're dealing with our own business as African people, we have to be very aware of the tripartite self, which is the spirit, the human form, the soul. We have to identify who we are. So thank you so much for holding the circle this morning. I really appreciate that. And I want to say thanks to all a very curious thing has happened. The Running African family, who've been around from 1990, so many of you came out this morning and sent me a note and a message to say we're holding the space. We're pouring libation and we're holding the space. The brothers have also come out to say we're holding the space in your own words. So thank you so much for that. I'm holding in my hand, and this one though, I was especially happy when I was finished. I closed it gently. I lock my lip. I nod my head. I say, all is not lost. I want to recommend this book as part of our Running African Book Club. Immediately, it's going to the top of the list in the Running African Book Club, right before Hilary Beckles, Britain's Black Death, both of them. And it's called Ghetto Youth's Bible, Wise Words for Ghetto Youths on the Rise. It's written by Gerald Hamilton. I'll tell you a bit about Gerald Hamilton. He's an engineering executive, entrepreneur, and author. He is a strategic growth leader. As North America's strategic growth leader at Introba, he drives expansion in healthcare, S&T, I think that's science and technology, mission critical, government, education, and aviation. He led WSP Healthcare, growing revenue from 30 million to 125 million, becoming the first black person in that role. And we're talking about U.S. now. He's an accomplished real estate developer and private equity investor. He co-owns Hamilton Estates Apartment Limited, Equity Capital Management Limited, and Real Equity Limited. He is also treasurer of NCR or SHE, a fellow of ASHE, and a best-selling author of Ghetto Youth's Bible. He has been named International Entrepreneur of the Year by YCPN and is committed to breaking barriers, inspiring leaders, and elevating the black community. I am especially honored to welcome Gerald Hamilton, and we'll be calling him Gary from here, to the space. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the Africa Forum, Gary.
Thank you. Delighted to be on it. Looking forward to it. I wish I was in the studio, but, I'll do with this just to having the forum, the opportunity to let people hear, and people, for people to be inspired as well, because that's what drives me to pass the baton and to help to pull my fellow men and women up as I rise, and that's something that I'm passionate about.
I am fascinated by your work. I'm fascinated by what I read, but also I've gone beyond reading. I've now watched everything you have online, and I gauged the extent to which you connect with young people. When my 16-year-old daughter, who I deliberately didn't call, but I know she was hearing because we turn it up loud enough, take time walk into the space and sit down and ask me, who that? you see how you stay though?
Yes.
All right,
and that's the idea with really putting it out there, and it's funny because when I was interviewed by Ian Boyne, about 10 years ago,
yes,
one of the things that he said to me, he said, Gerald, you don't understand. Your story has to be told.
Yes.
You have to get it out there for people to hear.
Yes.
And it's just like, like him talking to me and saying that, help me, to reinforce that belief that, yes, you have a story and people have to hear it because it's important.
Yes.
And the funny thing is that, like, for me, it's the youths that are at risk. And if they can latch on to and somehow just listen at and hear and just take even 1% of some of the great things you're putting out there, because that's what it is. They don't have to grasp it all, but to take something and say, hey, that, I can think like that. I can be this.
Yes.
I can do this.
Yes.
I can work a little harder. I can sleep a little less. And one of the most profound things happened after that interview is a little girl called me, like, on Facebook. It's just like, and I'm like, who's this? And she's like, Mr. Hamilton, I listened to your interview, and I'm just like how you make your mother proud. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make my mother proud.
You're giving me goose pimples around here. No.
Yes. I cried.
Yes.
I cried, because I'm like, that's what I want to hear, because you want the youth to latch on to it and believe that, if you just work hard, if you just, try to stay away from crime and be positive and think positive and having that defineness of thought and mindset,
yes,
it can bring you to wherever you want to go in this life.
Do you know, brilliant. Do you know where I want to start with you this morning is to start where you are now and to walk back, because this is phenomenal. I mean, obviously you're Jamaican. You have not lost any of your Jamaicanness. I like how you connect with young people, doing the whole thing. But you remind me of, it might have been Alexander Pope or Shakespeare, one of them, who talked about, if you can dream and not make dream your master, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and don't treat those two imposters the same, if you can walk with kings and don't lose the humble touch, then you are a man, my son. And every time I'm right throughout the book, this is what I thought as I read, that you have walked with kings, but you haven't lost your humble touch. So let's start with where you are now. We just said you're an engineer and you're an entrepreneur and you're an author. What do you currently do? Tell us about your company and where you are at this time in your life.
All right, so I'm a mechanical engineer. I did a degree in civil engineering and a master's in mechanical engineering. But I actually specialize in mechanical engineering, and that's how I started my career. My current position is the what you call a strategic growth leader. So that's meaning you're growing something. A company decided that they want to grow a global company, and they decided that, a Jamaican black person who is the first in that role is the person that they need to grow their firm, because they've done it with in a similar capacity with one of the largest engineering firms in the world, WSP, who has 80,000 people worldwide. So they saw that it was fitting, and they, brought me on to do this. So I lead all markets with this firm. The firm is actually called Introba. It's owned by an international firm called the Dar Group out of Saudi Arabia. And Dar is about 40,000 employees. So, it's still a pretty, very, very large company. Mm-hmm. So, one of the not to say that the challenge of the work, but I do have to travel a whole lot as part of my job. And, it's funny, but my job as growth leader is really to keep my what we call sector leaders. So all the sectors are, I talked about healthcare, mm-hmm. science and technology, mission critical, which is building data centers, because of the amount of data that's involved now. Those are multiplied, and billions of dollars of data centers, are being built every day. Mm-hmm. Government, that means anything federal in the U.S., whether it's hospitals or government buildings, where, we do the design of those as well. Mm-hmm. And also higher education. We do a lot of clients. Harvard University is one of our big clients. Yale is one of our big clients as well. So mm-hmm. whatever, science buildings, whatever dormitories, mm-hmm. Education buildings also, those are some of the stuff that we do. Okay. But one of the thing that we're passionate about also is really what we call living systems, because we want to make sure that when we're designing these buildings, it's environmentally friendly, and we're being sustainable in our approach, to sustainable development, to make sure that when we do this and when we're doing these buildings, we're making sure that we're implementing a whole lot of ideas and that can push the industry forward, and making sure that it can take care of itself. Mm-hmm. It's not burning too much carbon. It's not burning too much electricity, mm-hmm. so that there's not a lot of waste, and making sure that we also are regenerating and creating, energy as part of most of these projects that we're doing as well. So if it's solar, we're doing, so that's some of the stuff that we do.
Okay, hang on for me. Let me take a quick break and come back. And I started there, Gary, because I wanted our listeners to understand that you are now at the pinnacle of success. But for you, it was a challenge that you embraced every step of the way. So let's take you back now to where you started in Westmoreland, in a little community nestled between two cemeteries, but which is also known in the way Jamaica identify places as a ghetto. When I read it, I said to myself, I'm in the media a long time, then ghetto really there, Westmoreland?
Yes, it is. That's still there, to be honest, still there. And, one of the things that I always say, that I prefer, faith over fear, mm-hmm. because I fear nothing. I've grown up between two cemeteries. So the fear of nothing that you grew up with and stuff and everything. That's that was the worst fear, and and I had no fear of that. So because it's where I live.
I'm trying to understand it. Yes, so what's the name of the community?
Charlene. It's called Charlene.
Coming from the Charlene Temple.
And Charlene Temple.
But you came with a better example.
That's exactly where it came from. It's from the movie Charlene Temple that it was named after.
Yes.
But that community, to be honest, I was saying, I would tell anybody that, there's always a situation in which, when you're from that situation, you can succumb to the, to the happenings, to the crime, and violence that are predominant in those type of communities, and still is. Yes. There's not a lot of, mentorship that you see, but, the community was close-knit. And even though there was series of challenges and stuff, we were happy. I was a happy kid. I had a lot of friends in the community. We have a lot of, a competitive edge that we compete for, a lot of things. And then I actually saw the community as my university, as the educator. There's a lot of people in the community who didn't go to college and stuff and everything, but they were reading Time magazine when I was like 7, 8 years old. And passed down to me, you should read these things. Yes. And these are some of the stuff that, these are a lot of the, and even, it's funny, even yesterday I'm interacting with some folks because I'm in SAB now, and I was interacting with some folks in my Charlotte community. And, they were the same in terms of challenging you and telling you, and they were saying the same to other people. One of the guys, somebody said, this guy's always telling me that we can't do this and that and everything. And I'm like, it's funny because that's exactly what he told me. But I took that as a charge to make sure to prove him wrong. So although you have naysayers, you have people who are giving you positive affirmation, you have those people also who say, I'm going to turn out to nothing. He's going to be one of the statistics.
Yes.
And all those stuff and everything. It's just like, I took all the positive affirmation, but also I took all the negatives and converted it into positive because I'm saying, okay, if you say that I can't do it, I am going to do it. And that's been my career and life in terms of, I could, I would say mute the naysayers, but also use what they say as motivation to show them that I can.
One of the things you talk about in the book is in that early life is how much time you just spend in the cemetery, but what you did in the cemetery. And also, because to you, this is where you're growing up, a community nestled between two cemeteries. I am going to, what you've made me do now is to book a time to go look at how this community is set up, because I can't figure it out. But you say Charlene is still there. The people of Charlene, I'm sure, are listening this morning, and I want to greet the youth and the community of Shoreline who are listening into the program this morning. Westmoreland all the time tune in to IRFM 100%, so we thank you for listening in. But one of the things to talk about was growing up there as a youth and, how you spent your time between what you were doing in the cemetery, sitting on graves, and but also selling box juice, etc. Talk to us about those early times. And
So it's funny to say that the grave, that the cemetery and the owner at the time, Dolly, allowed us to have our football field at the cemetery because that's where it was.
Yes.
We play cricket, we play all the sports there. We have competition against one area of the community against the other, on Sundays at times. So that was our play field. That was our park. That was, in the cemetery itself.
Yes.
That was my barber shop. That I trim people under the tree in the cemetery. People come from all roads that became a barber, in that community. And, just to, follow on in terms of selling, market, one of the challenges, when I have my father left the house, left our family when I was 10 years old, to move in with another family.
You were very open about that in the book. So thank you for that, because, it's important. This is not unusual in Jamaica. So thank you for being so open about that. And my mom is always industrious. She's always trying to find something to do. She'd sell, she have a shop, she bake. She was working at the butcher shop. Like my mom did very, very various different, jobs just to make sure that we're okay. So as, we wanted to help her. Me and my bigger brother, she would buy box juice, and we would do it on a Friday, sometimes even not going to school on a Friday. We do it on a Saturday, as well. And we would walk up and down Great Georgia Street in the town, and we would sell our box drinks. And it was, it's funny because I think learning and doing that, because I deal with people that says we don't want a box drink or say no or turn you away. But also there's some people that, that embrace you as well, and making sure that, they're going to support you just for the sake of supporting you, that you would go to them and clean to them. There's a lot of great people that I met who put me under their wings, and I would even go. There's a lady called Miss Mumsy, and I can't forget, she used to give me lunch. He had a restaurant that she took, so there's always, these great people that are there just to show you, just to give you that hope that there are great people out there.
and great people, to help. So
yeah, and I like how you identify these people in your life, and throughout the book you reference them all, and where you remember the names, and it's brilliant because you give all their names, and you said these are a lot. As you read the book, you saw how you were helped along the way, which I think is also phenomenal. But also there was one part in the book where you talked about in the early days. I don't know if you started out with bag juice, but just the way you said it, I think you said you graduated from one to the other. I think from bag juice to box juice.
Yes. Box juice to bag juice, yeah. And bag juice, what happened yesterday, I did, and the bag juice was in more bulk, because when we were doing the box juices, you would buy 6 at the Meat Plus and we would walk up and down. So the markup and stuff was very smaller. So with respect to the bag juice, we were selling it in bulk. And then I had my father used to sell ice cream, so we're used to riding what we call a carrier bicycle at the front. You could put a box and you put all the bag juice in. And when I was selling bag juice, I was selling in the market, in Sablamar market. So I would park, at the front, and people would just come and buy bag juice. Yeah. And so that was something that we did, that I did for a number of years. I was, I was good at it.
Well, I know.
Responded.
It was a graduation.
Yeah, people responded positive.
Yeah,
yes.
but you
and
always...
I think.
Yes, go ahead.
But it's so funny that I think that all those experiences actually helped me and mold me into, the type of engineer I am. Because a lot of people would say, you're not a normal engineer because, you're a people person. You speak publicly. You're good at doing business development. You're good at doing all these interactions with people that a normal, engineer is not good at. So I these are the experience that you learn from. You don't know. You don't know that you're planting these seeds, early and use them as a fuel. And that's something that even with looking back, I'm like, man, I am so happy. Yes. I am so happy that I was bold enough to say, yes, my mom said, go and sell back shoes, and so go and sell back shoes. Because those are the stuff that built.
And you talk about that experience too, as you selling the market, which was moving up, and but that how you were, was it barefooted, and that there were other of your peers who would come in and see you, and how you felt about that, and there are times when you would literally hide. It reminds me of when I used to work at the post office, that when my friends came back from school, it was a holiday job, it's like you feel a little embarrassed. But so you said, so this was a little embarrassing for you, but it was also part of the going through the fire, but being hardened, but coming out as gold, in other words.
That's right. And, and that's one of the things, coming from a community like Charlene, and then, going to mining school and interacting with people who are better off, like in life, in terms of what they can and what they show. It puts you in that, in that kind of, because you feel that you don't have enough. And you feel, and you see you're doing something like selling bag juice on the street, and they're coming, to the market with their parents, that they can afford absolutely everything. And you, as a, it's one of those emotional points when I talk about it, like I feel teary because, I didn't understand that, that I am doing what I had to do, but it also wasn't, the proudest moment for me, because I didn't want my friends to say this about me, have it to, to talk about that school, to put me down in any way. Yes. And those are, but that's, those are some of the stuff that drives you as well, because it's, those emotional, stuff that shows that we're vulnerable, and we just have to build that strength and resilience, and that's something that I built by doing that and help.
And you show that vulnerability in the book, but also I know that there's so much that you could have said, not should, but could have. I read it and I said, Gary could have said so much more, because I know you have 3 more books in you for those early days. Yeah, but so let me take a quick break, because Manning seemed to have had quite an effect on you, and so I want to get to your days at Manning's. Let me take a quick break. Nice. So you went to Manning's High, and I see throughout the book, and even listening to you in all the interviews that you've done, and listening to you just talking, that was a defining and a part of the space in which you gained so much, a coming of age that had so much impact on you. But simultaneously, the effect of an impact of your mother on you. So let's talk about those two things. They seem to be pretty intertwined to me. Am I right?
Absolutely. Manning's, to be honest, I think, like for me, Manning's created, the person I am in terms of gave me that educational development, but also, that community that helped to really mold me into what I am. And I'm still a part. I just did a charity event yesterday at Manning's, and a lot of people would say to me, hey, you do so much for Manning's. And I always say to myself, but they did so much for me. Why not? You absolutely have to do that because, most of the teachers, it's funny, even yesterday I saw the teachers were embraced and they were so much part, they were my cheerleader. Everybody would look out for me, and it was just like, it's funny, I just had my 50th birthday, and like all my sisters, went to, two of my sisters that went to Manning's, they always tell me how challenging it was for them because, like, every teacher is just like, your girl sister, you have to do well, you have to do this, you have to do this, and there was so much pressure. They're like, you don't understand how much pressure was on us because of you, but because of they actually set me up for success. And it was just like, every teacher, and it was funny. I actually was part of Manning's before I even started going to Manning's. So my first mentor and teacher was a man called Mr. Vermont that was teaching at Manning's School. And when I was 9 years old, he took, he basically, it's from the church, Grace and Truth Assembly Hall. There was 3 guys that actually, took my community in their hand, and they had Sunday school at my house in Charlotte. Yes. And as part of that, he picked about 3 of us, and he every day would go to his house and we do practice questions to prepare for the common entrance exam. So, and he was a maths teacher. So, like, he teach me chess at 10 years old. So everything, so I was a part of Manning's. My dad sold ice cream at Manning's. So it was just like, it was always a part of me in a lot of ways. I saw this great institution that my father was a part of because she was one of the only vendors, like 2 vendors that sold in the school. And, one of the things that he talked about, the experience, the football games and everything. And I became all of that. I captained the football team. I played for the chess team. I captained the table tennis team. It was such an important part of me, of doing and multitasking and managing stuff. I remember once when I was in 6th form, my vice principal called me and said, I have to have a meeting with you. And the meeting was, you cannot do so much stuff. You're on the school challenge quiz team, you're on the tennis team, you're on the football. You have to drop some of the stuff because I'm scared that you won't do well in your A-level exam. So it's just like people, looking out for me, and I still did it all, but I still did well also because...
Did you always have this balance? And I know you talk about this in the book of where your mom came in and she literally said to you that you had to make a choice, right? But at the same time, so you had, what made you this kind of person in terms of, so you were brilliant and it was obvious, but there was a time when your mom had to step in to say, look, listen, boy, it's either this or that,
Yes. And one of the things that youths, we get carried away by our passion.
Yes.
So my passion was playing football and playing table tennis. And I didn't realize, I was in, first one, I realized that I had to study hard and stuff because it came naturally to me. I wasn't, so I remember the first exam that I did, my mom has to come for my report because if you do bad, your parents come for your report. So it's not, I wish those days were, were the same because it's embarrassing when, your other friends are seeing your parents come because they know you didn't go well and you had a chance that your parents are interacting with teachers to talk about and go over each subject why you didn't do well. For me, that was kind of, oh man, like, I can't have this happening to me. And my mom did, told me off and make sure that I understand that, you're here to do your schoolwork. And I remember, because I was playing a lot of football. So I remember she said to me, listen, you have to remember why you're here. And you listen, I am gonna tell you for no football or anything until you get your grades up. And it wasn't like for me, that's not what I wanted to hear. But that was what I, at that point, absolute what my mom should have done and what all parents should have done. Say, hey, when you're able to do your schoolwork and be at the top of the class and stuff, then will allow you to, to go back to play football and do what you want to do. And then at that point, you can figure out how to balance it. Because I didn't even understand about balancing. And I just wanted to play football and I wanted to do everything. And so really at that point, I doubled down. I remember in second form, I got the most improved student because I was maybe like 18th in the class. I came like 5th at that point. By the time I was in third form, I was the top of the class. I was the top of the class, and the feeling of euphoria of people seeing me and saying, "Wow, like what? She is the top of the class," and so that feeling was I didn't need anything else. So when that happened, then my mom saw that and she said, "Okay, so you can start doing the other stuff, but make sure that you keep that feeling of I didn't want to lose that feeling, so I am going to work hard anyway. If I'm going to play football, I'm going to make sure that I understand that the schoolwork is first. Anything else, you do." Yes.
And your mom herself didn't have, what was it? It was up to primary or secondary education. She didn't have a formal...
Well, she went to... I didn't have. My mom stopped going to school when she was 14 years old to be a household helper. So she didn't have the education.
Yes.
But
she wanted that for you, though.
Question. Yes. And the funny thing, somebody asked me, said, how did your mom know to push you in that direction and want you to have a university degree and all those stuff and everything when she didn't have it? But I tell you something, my mom was a helper for my family, some of my family in Spanish Town, in some city. And their kids actually went to university. One, at the time, one is a registered nurse down in the States, but they all matriculated to university. So I think, I'm just saying, from that, I think that's where she understands and saying, hey, this is a way for my family to, pull themselves up for the bootstrap, and education is the equalizer. If I can get my kids educated, then I will give them a chance. And I realized, I'm like, that maybe, wow, because she wanted to make sure that I remember I used to sit down to my brother, for my mom, at that time, beating my brother to read. And I'm like, I'm not taking any beating because I'm always afraid of beating. So me, I make sure to read before me get beat.
That worked.
It was just that. And, but she just wanted that. She wanted that for us.
Yeah. But so eventually you did so well at school. You talk throughout the book and even in your, because this is Ghetto Youth's Bible. It's a Bible I'm holding in my hand. You really talk about how you can, the importance of overachieving, putting in more than you need to put in. You say this is important. Do not sell yourself short. Don't just do enough. And you said this was your own way of approaching things even in high school. We see you did that because with the amount of subjects that you came out of Manning's with, but elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, so, one of the things that I and that's what I said, the feeling of euphoria, to be on the top, to be good, to be recognized. I realized that, to get the edge, you have to, I call it, you have to overdo it, which is one of the commandments. You just have to just give it your all. And in order to be the best, and that's true, I was one of the best table tennis players, like in the Westmoreland. And, it's just like how I did that is making sure that I'm prepared. I'm training hard. I'm doing all this stuff. When I play football as captain of the team, I'm making sure that I keep all my players organized. I make sure that they're training properly. I'm making sure that also they're doing their schoolwork. So it's that part of it that really, to say, what, if I'm going to do something, I am going to do it as best as I can. So, it's funny, there's something that I said even to myself now. Is it really balanced? Because I'm saying, it's more integration. It's making sure that whenever I lend my eyes or put my hands on something and I'm doing something, I'm going to make sure that I do it to my utmost best. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think that's extremely important. Mm-hmm. If in mentorship, I tell all the youths that I do it, I'm saying, if you're going to do a job, hey, you have to show up as the best version of yourself and give it your absolute all. Mm-hmm. That when you look back, you can say, hey, I've done all that I could have done. Mm-hmm. And that's all. That's all I'm telling you. We have to do in life is to make sure that we know that when we look back, we know that, hey, I've gave it my all.
And you said failure is not an option. And you said this is a lesson you learned from your beloved mother.
Oh man, and I'm telling you, that's a story that when I talk about the most. When I, as a youth, didn't really understand. Of course, after getting my A-levels and got accepted to go to the prestigious University of the West Indies, which is the 5% or I didn't really even understand what I've achieved at that point. I decided that I made a decision because my mom didn't have a job. I thought university was insurmountable in terms of the amount of money that you have to pay. I've seen people go on at the expense that it costs. And I made a decision that, you know what, I am going to sit a year out without even having a discussion with my mom. Mm-hmm. And, maybe work. I didn't even start looking at a job. I don't understand how I thought that I was going to work, and I wasn't even looking at a job. So that's one of the things. It was just like you don't have it together as a youth.
Youthful
I remember one. Exactly.
Yes.
When I came in one day from hanging out at a football match, my mom said to me, "Listen." My mom came in, and I know I was in trouble. Yeah. She said, "What exactly are you doing? What are you trying to do? Are you not going to university?" And I said, "Mom, but you can't afford it." And she said, "Listen, whether you like it or not, you're going to go to university." And I didn't even have a choice. My bag was packed. At that time, we called it the grip because I want grip. Yes. And the grip was packed, and she said, "Tomorrow, we're going to Kingston tomorrow."
Really?
And we joked, on a bus. Yes, on a bus. They didn't have a choice. I remember in a bus, went in some cities where, she used to work at the health. We stayed there. Yes. And then in the morning, we went up to the University of the West Indies admission department. Mm-hmm. When I went there, my mom, found out that I deferred my place because I didn't say that to her, which is just like, making a decision like that was, I thought it was something
at least you got help, and she probably would appreciate it because you're going to bring in some money to help your mom, but she didn't want that break at all, and so she packed her grip and carry her. I'm going to take a break and come back. I'm going to take a break and come back because I know you also had an accident, but one of the things that, and I don't want to skip over the book, and I still don't want to talk about everything because I need people to buy the book too, but also to say to go through, we're not going to go through all of the chapters. What I want to do is to go to the Ghetto Youth Bible and to talk to our young people this morning. So take us when we come back through that journey from the University of the West Indies into the UK, into the US, and then we're going to be back where you are. I know that we're pre-saying the thing, but I really want to get to the Ghetto Bible, and we're looking at the time. Next time you come in the studio, right, sir? All right, let me take a quick break. At the Fortune 500 level, or Fortune 2, Ghetto Youth's Bible is his book, Wise Words for Ghetto Youths on the Rise. This is a brilliant entrepreneur who has done so well out of Jamaica, who has not lost his connection with Jamaica. Everybody at me now are getting a barrage of things to say. It is not Alexander Pope, and it is not Shakespeare. It is Rudyard Kipling, and the poem is If. If you can walk with kings and not lose a common touch, then yours is the earth and everything that is in it, my son. All right. So there was an accident leading into you going into university, and it seems to have been really a serious accident. So I don't want to gloss over it. Talk us through that period, though, of going into university, how that defined you, the University of the West Indies, and then take us, and then we'll continue through to your overseas journey.
Yeah. So I it's some would ask me what was the turning point of my life, I would say having an accident, when I was 18 years old. I remember a lot like it, it's June 18th. I was actually on break from Mona because I did my first year at Mona. And I got accepted to do civil engineering in Trinidad. So that summer was supposed to be my first trip overseas. I got a U.S. visa, and I was going to Miami to see my uncle. And the morning before the flight, I didn't have a suitcase or anything. The grip, I don't think the grip was good enough to go on the plane.
No, not gonna work.
So I went to borrow a suitcase from one of my school friends because, they traveled a whole lot. And my brother used to work for Tanker Bikes Rental and used to ride bikes. And when he used to take home the bikes and stuff, he would show me how to ride it, and I obliged and learned from it. So he lent me the bike the morning. I was on the bike with my friend was on the back. He was holding the suitcase coming back. I was maybe about 200 meters from my house, coming around a corner that I navigated a million times. And, it just happened that day. This was the day that I wasn't going to navigate this corner successfully. The bike slid, and we had an accident. My friend was okay, but I actually fell on my kneecap, and my kneecap was split in two. That was the most pain and the most painful thing. I remember my friend, Bo Donovan Baker at Camp Toget. He lived up the road, and for some reason, he was the first one there, or maybe the first one I observed because, I was out of it for a little while. He took me up, and I remember he said to me, "You okay? Are you okay to stand up?" And I said, "Yes, I'm okay." And the moment I said that, he let me go. I actually, passed out because my knee gave way, and end up in the Savimar Hospital, and. At that time, the hospital didn't have an X-ray machine, so they didn't do the X-ray. They couldn't do the X-ray. They sent me home. They sent me home on a piece of board and rock, with bandage around it, and gave me some painkillers and said I have to go to the Black River Hospital the next day to do the X-ray, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You think about how crazy your kneecap is split in two, and you're sent home.
No wonder you work. No wonder you're building hospitals left, right, and center.
Exactly. I'm telling you, it's no coincidence that I specialize in hospitals, and yes, and it was the great thing that my mom, my aunt was working at the University Hospital at West Indies, and at the same time, my mom was doing being a helper also again in the Cayman Islands because my friends actually connected her with that opportunity, and she was there only 6 months. She was here at that point, so she wasn't there when I had my accident. So she arranged my with my aunt, and we went up to the next day. Actually, we took a bus. We bought 2 seats in the bus. Can you imagine with my kneecap had already split?
One for your knee, one for your knee, one for your foot.
Yes. Yeah. And we went straight up to the University of West Indies Hospital, and I went straight into surgery because she arranged, she said, because of the nature that you have to get it done right away because infection, will, it's going to set in. So I had the surgery. We thought it was a successful surgery. They sent me home after 2 days, only to wake up the same night with in excruciating pain. And by it was dawn, I could actually see that my cast, my pristine white cast, was red. And saw that when I had to go back to the hospital that morning, and they found out that it was infection. Infection set in, and I had to do 10 different surgeries at the hospital. For the next 3 months. In order, it was just like
it was. Painful,
I remember, I remember the 6th one. I was going into the surgery, and all the folks in the hospital were crying. Like, all the patients were crying for me because they're like, man, like, how much more can this youth take? Like, it was that
and you're 18.
challenging and tough. 18.
Yeah.
18 years old.
You've had you've had many challenges. You said this was a defining moment for you. This accident was.
It was because it showed. I wanted to get out. I wanted to go to university. I wanted to do my engineering degree, and I was sitting in this hospital for 3 months. I prayed. I do everything that I can, but when I realized that, I remember I always tell people that I formulated the whole way to get myself discharged out of the hospital because I decided I am going to Trinidad. And so I told a story. My doctor was going on vacation. So the moment the next doctor came, that he was going to be there for the, he was going to be his deputy for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I told him that my doctor said I was going to come out of the hospital next week. And he's like, okay, well, let's check and see the injury, and if it's healed enough in the next few days, I'll discharge you. I'm like, okay, that's good, because my other doctor wasn't even thinking about that. But I just put it out there, and he did. The next week, I was out of the hospital. He said, come back in 3 days, and let me check, and if it's okay, maybe I could allow you to go on the plane. And I'm like, I didn't even, he can say maybe or whatever, but I am going to go on the plane.
Got Trinidad.
Anyway.
Yes.
I am going to Trinidad. I'm going to start my engineering degree because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that was some fortitude. And you talk about leaving Jamaica, jetting off to Trinidad with your two best friends. Two new best friends, which was your two crutches.
Yes, two crutches. Yes. I was on them for the next 3 or 4 months. It was a long haul. It was a long haul. I was a month and 2 weeks late for a 3-month semester in engineering, which was challenging in itself. The dean of the faculty, when I called, he said, "You're too late. I don't think you can ever pass if you try to do it. So don't come." I remember I called my friend Jamal Banton. Actually, it's his 50th birthday. Jamal, happy birthday. But Jamal said to me, "Hey, Garol," because we were both at Mona together. "Hey, I am here. I've been here for 1 month and a week. The only thing I do is take notes. I don't understand nothing that's going on, and you're much smarter than me. So you can come and we can do it together."
That must have been very encouraging.
Yeah.
I'm been there for 1 month, man. I don't know nothing, boss. Come in, man.
Come in.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, yes. And when they embraced me, they took care of me. I was on Canada Hall, and they rallied around me. I got my notes written out. I even hopping on my crutches. They helped me, to get to classes. Everything. It was just such a community of folks just helping, and it really just actually showed, that people care. And that's something that stood, and that's something that I actually, that helped to build a humanitarian in me, in terms of, the support system that I have for people when they see that you needed that help. And it was, pushing through and biting through, that challenge. I did, regardless of what the dean taught, I did pass all my subjects that semester. I did, went on, after even, I did have 2 surgeries there as well to straighten my knee, because it was immobilized for so long in the cast that it couldn't bend, and I had to have 2 surgeries to bend my knee. So it was, I think for me, I'm a football player. I couldn't, at the time they told me I would never play football again. And those are the stuff that, that I think, like, for me, that helped me to push through, because I did play football again.
And this is the thing I love. And this is the thing I really love with you, because you said failure is not an option. You talk about not giving up, and you're using your own experiences, how you push through each challenge, to be the person that you've become. We have a listener who is a tennis pro, like a really good tennis player. And this is a note he sent me, K. Ezekiel. He says, "I would like a TT match with him. I will play him for a copy of his book."
All right, let's do it.
So if you want me to set it up, I can set this thing up,
let's do it. We can have it live.
Yes, it's true. Nick, we're talking to Nicholas Evans now. Nick, you arrange this TT match right in the yard of Ira from here. So, all right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Here, obviously, an author, and we're talking about just how he is where he's at now, but beyond that, how he's using his platform to help ghetto youths and just youths generally, especially young people in Jamaica. Gerald, so Trinidad was also instructive for you. Obviously, you talk about how getting A's and B's, you said the grades weren't so good. You did all get A+, and you said the grades weren't so good. That's very interesting. What were you expecting?
So it's the friends and who you were hanging with. And I remember one of my Jamel, who was one of my best friend at college. Jamel was getting I got in the first semester I got I remember I got 1C. 1C I got for the that's the only C I got it in computer. And I got B+, and I got 1A. And that's something that I remember Jamel said to me, hey, but Garol, you at the time they called me Patella, you teach me, even you teach us everybody everything, and they call it drop and draft. They used to come to my room and I'm teaching and you should be getting all A's. I am getting A's in stuff that you're teaching me. But what I realized that what I was doing, I wasn't being thorough enough. I was doing it. I was looking at it and said, you know what? I go over it. I can do it. I put it aside. I don't work on it. I don't do questions. I don't, So I realized that I was just selling myself short in really just executing, the plan to what it is to, double down, make sure that you know it inside and out. And that will help you, to get the grades that you want. And I realized that when he said that to me,
yes,
go ahead. When he said that to me, that's when the light came on, and I started doing what I should be doing to get mostly A's, straight A's, for the rest of it. My college days.
It's phenomenal to me, because you seem to have developed at a very early age the ability to be mindful, to reflect, and to change your behavior.
Yes.
This is not natural,
But
what I love about what you're doing about this, though, is that this is what you're passing on to young people. But this is what you became over time. Very reflective, very mindful. How come?
To be honest, a gift from the Almighty. I can't say anything else, but discernment and just basically just the ability to be mindful and the opportunity to have that defiance of thought. And it's just something that always been a part of me. People always say that, why are you so positive? How can you always see the cup of the glass as half full? And it's funny, I always said, I don't see it half empty or half full. I see it as I can fill it anytime I want to.
very pragmatic. Yes. It is what it is.
That's the mindset.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's I think faith is important as well.
Yes.
My faith and the belief system helped me to think that way and helped me to be rational and be mindful. And I think that does help because I could adjust. I always feel that if you say when you're sailing and the sea get rough, you adjust your sails.
Yes.
That's something that I learned early. And even having that accident, to be honest, helped me to do that because it says, you know what? Okay, you're walking, you have one less kneecap than the average person and stuff and everything. So you need to do what you need to measure up and to work a little harder because you're a little bit behind. And that's exactly the mindset that I always have. And that's how I push and push myself, to whatever I'm trying to do and to make sure that, I am pushing to get the edge because I just feel like I'm behind, and maybe I tell myself that I'm behind always.
And that push, that is what led you to, against all the odds, the medical problems you were having, starting university late in Trinidad. You're doing an engineering degree, civil engineering, and you managed to complete that. I just let you, this is an aside that I want you to know that I'm having the Ian Boyne syndrome. It cannot be done in one sitting. And Ian was very right about that. Right, so it's basically what it is. I can rush this thing, or we just find another time to finish it up. But to say though that you so this is the attitude that, with the help of others, as you point out all the time, the support of your friends and your mom and others along the way to complete the civil engineering course in Trinidad, and then. From Trinidad, there was a move to England. Was it a 1-2 or was this, a series?
It wasn't a straight path, to be honest. I didn't have, it wasn't intentional, but I remember the Professor Phelps, who was one of my favorite professors, and they used to call me Teacher's Pet because he used to look out for me a whole lot, and even called me out in class sometimes. Hey, class, do you understand? And then he would turn and say, Carol, do you understand?
Oh, yes.
He used to be like upset, like, why is it, what? But I developed a great relationship with him. I remember before I leave, when I graduated, he said to me, he was traveling somewhere, and he said, hey, before you go back to Jamaica, I want to make sure I sit with you and have a talk. And I remember I actually delayed my trip back because he said that to me. And when I met him, he said, when I meet up with him at the university, he said to me, I want to tell you the reason why I really try to take care of you and try to encourage you and be a mentor for you. And seeing that like I'm favoring you than most of the other students. He said, because I see myself in you, which was just like, so profound. He said, and what he said to me, he said, don't stop here. I think the world is yours. I think you can do absolutely anything that you set out to do because you're brilliant. And, for someone who's a brilliant, one of the most brilliant professor and person to say that to you, you can imagine, 21-year-old getting that, that type of, that type of feedback from somebody in that at that level.
Wow.
Yeah, it gave me wings.
Yes.
So, and I remember he said, if you're going to do your master's and stuff, I would advise that you do it in the UK. And I'm like, okay. So that was kind of etched in my brain. When I went back to Jamaica, I had an offer from JPS, but I didn't have anywhere to stay in Kingston, and I thought, I went to an interview with Caribbean Construction for the couples hotel that was going on. And I remember the salary that I asked for, the guy laughed when I asked when I told him the salary.
Yes, I saw you right about that. You said it was like a way, what you asked for, they thought you didn't deserve it, or they thought it was just too much?
They thought it was way too much. And I'm like, I was even calculating just my, not even to pay rent, because I would be living in Savlamar, and just to get by, it wasn't anything I think that was exorbitant, that was too much.
Yes.
And it was less than what.
So how much was that? How much was it? You didn't say in the book, how much was it? Can't be the one.
No. To be honest, at the time, I think it was like $600,000 or $700,000 a year. It wasn't a lot of money at that time.
But
JPS was offering me 1.1. So it was just like, why would it be? And I think maybe it's because the type of job also. It's more, on the construction side, and maybe it was a very different. But I think, it gave me, to say, you know what? I am gonna, because at the time it was, God kind of put things in place sometimes where you just pave that path and just show you the signs. And because Professor Phelps talks about UK, my mom just got her first trip to the UK and decided that she was gonna go there for a little while, because she left Cayman and went to the UK. And she said to me, I called her and she said to me, why don't you just come to the UK? Because at the time I had a 2-year Commonwealth visa that you could go and work.
Yeah. Oh.
You shouldn't, So it was available. I have it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance of doing this because it would help me to achieve what, what Professor Phelps want me to do. I would want to do my master's and all the stuff and everything. Let's go in the space and see if I can make it happen. And that's how I went.
At this point, you weren't thinking of a scholarship. You're thinking, okay, I'll work and I'll pay my way through school.
That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. That's how, I articulated. And
you know what I love about it?
Yeah.
About your book, your time in England, you go to England and behave like a real Pakistani or Indian. You just care people. I said, I said, I love it. I really love it. But and you made me a liar because one of the things that I've always said is that if Jamaicans coming into England, because I study in England too now, I'm still at work, I said if Jamaicans coming into England would just do what the Pakistanis do and what the Indians do. And which is, and I'll ask you to talk about a little bit about that. But one thing I want to say, only because of time, are you able to come back next week? Because we're not going to finish anything.
Yes, I can.
All right. Okay. So talk to us a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about your time in England.
A lot of people ask me, how did you do that? Why did you want to take up so much people? I remember when I went to the UK, I wanted to come back home. I'm like, this place is cool. I didn't have any friends.
Yes.
And I'm like, so when I started to work and I started to, to get the knack of things and comfortable, I decided that, I had a group of friends. I remember, that I used to study with. They were younger than me, but I basically, they even, Professor Denzel Williams, who was the principal of the University of West Indies, was one of my little mentees that I put them in a group and we speak together, we study and yes.
Now we know, Prof.
Study them and show them what to do. Yes, that's what I, so it's one of the things that I used to, that I was passionate about. So I have this neighborhood of, of friends, of community, of youths and people around me that, that was the support system. So going in the UK and didn't have that. I had that in Trinidad with Jamel and Blazer and all the folks, who were there as well. But then I went to England now and I was alone. And, my mom was there, then I had some cousins that wasn't doing the same thing. I wasn't as motivated as me. And I thought, well, if I can get myself into a position in which I can help some of my friends to come up to the UK, I could create my own community. I could help them and I could create my own community at the same time. And that's one of the things that I set out to do, very early. Yes. I remember I didn't even have a place. I was living, with my stepdad at the time. My mom was just, dating, my her husband, to be at the time. So me making even that decision wasn't the easiest. I asked my stepdad, he was, and my mom was saying, okay, because she's always believed in helping. And they're like, okay, all right, you can help, because the first person that I took up was the person that helped my mom. His mom helped my mom to go to the Cayman Islands for a job. So it's all, paying back in different ways.
Yes,
so I bought a bed and put a second bed in my bedroom, and my friend came, and, until, he got a job. He went to, he got into university. He rented a place for himself. I took somebody else up. So it was just like a revolving door in terms of that.
And there was one time when you actually gave up your own apartment, rented another home, and so you're not ordinary. You were really doing. And
there was one point where there's about like 16 people living in a 3-bedroom house because they didn't have anywhere to sleep. I remember I went on vacation and came back and to see 2 more people. But they were like, they didn't have I have a policy that I didn't want to turn anybody away. And I realized that there was not a lot of people in England who wanted to help their family.
Yes.
It was one of those things that I'm like, you know what? I have the opportunity. I have a good job.
Yes.
I could pay the rent. I could do what I did give up the house and make sure that, I took care of them. It used to be a situation in that I got them into college. I make sure that they have the extension and make sure that at no point they're outstaying their status. So they're still, figure out a way how to make sure that they get a job and keep them there. And it was, I could tell you that was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done, because a lot of those folks, they were able to bring their family, their kids. We have engineers, we have lawyers, we have doctors from like for me, if you ask me what is the most fulfilling thing I've done in my life, is doing that. Is really helping folks that they can help their family.
I was bowled over by it. I really thought it's something. Yes. That part of the book I read a few times because I said to myself, "Wow, this is what we should have been doing." And you made a point just now where you said our people in England weren't necessarily open to doing this kind of thing, and it's something that I want to have a conversation with you about another time, because this is true, and this is where we fail each other, especially in the United Kingdom. So you settled for a job. We have just 5 minutes, and I'm going to wrap it. With England, we're going to come back and talk about how you next week, how you got a job in England, and how the ascension, because you're now at the pinnacle, as we said earlier, of your career. You are an engineer who is working, handling portfolios that only Fortune 500 companies handle. And you're leading this process, and you've traveled extensively doing what you're doing. So we want to get to that, and then also to your charge to young people. But I want to use this few minutes that we have for you to, because the young people are already in the space, have a conversation with them for this 5 minutes before we go. Talk specifically to the young people who are listening.
Yes. So, I, as a youth, growing up, I think mentorship is extremely important. I think the visual of seeing something and seeing a path, that's written, or a path that somebody else has traveled. Some successful folks. It's something that's important because, like, for me, I saw a glimpse of those stuff, and I remember the first name when I thought I wanted to be an engineer. The first name that I saw was a guy called Delroy Dell, was an engineer. He got a scholarship, and his name was on the board in my high school auditorium. And I always said I wanted to be like Delroy Dell. And then found out he went to Trinidad, and he's still an engineer now. But it's really the visual of seeing something, a path. And in the Ghetto Youth Bible, I said, you know what? I'm going to set out to write a guide, to people, for youth, just to see that, hey, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you start in life. What matters is that you use what you have. You put together, what you have. You put your head down. You get a mentor. You put together a master plan for your life. I always say, put together a master plan, because people have to plan. You have to decide what goals, how are you going to get to those goals? And those, so it has to be also, you have to break down and making sure that you're setting your goals short-term, long-term. In a year, what do you want to achieve? In 5 years, what do you want to achieve? And those are some of the stuff that I think that it will help you. And also, if you're going to that path, also you have to understand that you have to, integrity is an important part of it. You have to have a moral compass. You have to make sure that if you say you're going to do something, you do it, because that's important. That will get you through life. Mm-hmm. People will work with you because they feel that they can trust you, and that's something that's extremely important.
Yes. And what would Go ahead. And what would you say to those? This is brilliant. And what would you say to the persons now who are going into exams, mock exams now, CXCs coming up, CAPE coming up? What would you say to those young people? Yeah.
Hey, what I'm saying, and I say to all young people, please give it your absolute all. You can, whatever it is, if it's the extra curricular activity that you want to do, or the games that you want to play, or you want to go and play with your friends, you can always do that after. Give it your absolute all. Study. Stay up the extra hour. Sleep a little less so that you can put that work in. Do the practice papers and all the stuff that you need to do to get you ready. Mm-hmm. Because, you cannot be over-prepared for exams. That's something that I always learn. Mm-hmm. You do as much question as possible to make sure that when you go into that exam, you will be ready and prepared because you have done the work. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. That's something that I could always, and we'll talk about my other book that's coming out in a month also. Mm-hmm. That's called From Good to Grace. But it's really talking about, hey, there's if you put in the work, there's no way that you can fail.
All right.
And if you give it your all, now, you can look back and say, hey, you know what? I've given it my all. And whatever you achieve, that I couldn't have done more. And that's what I want. All the people the kids who are preparing for exam and who are doing the exam to do. Just.
Who is the Beast? We'll be giving some books out next week. In the meantime, iNation has quite a few. For example, not necessarily with the Beast, but he has books. The book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read is one. Also, The History and Origin of Christianity, that's another. And also the history text, the Tudors and the Stuarts, that's an ancient history text. That's a very, very good one. We're saying goodbye. Big A's in. Big A, I do have to run because, I have an engagement.
You have duties, yes.
I have duties. So I'm going to go do that duties, and we leave you with Mr. Big A. Is that a turntable?
Get on it.
Get on it. This is how we say goodbye for today. By the way, Big A, I'm playing from YouTube now, so it calls for a lot of attention. I'm just saying.
For one being representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad, Gaza, bad we bad. Bad we bad, Gaza. Too stuck in a...